Let's start with a familiar situation. You're doing fine, not rich, not struggling, just fine. You wake up in a decent house, check your expensive phone, drive a respectable car, pay for subscriptions you don't remember signing up for. And somehow, despite earning more than you used to, you feel financially stuck. Which is odd, because on paper, this looks like progress. You own things, nice things, adult things. So why does it feel like the scale is tipped against you? Today, we are not talking about budgeting tricks, hustle culture, or becoming a monk who lives on lentils. We are talking about something much simpler and much more uncomfortable. Some of the things you are most proud to own are quietly keeping you broke. Not dramatically, not irresponsibly, just consistently. So join the ride as we explore and discover what actually tips the scale and why avoiding certain assets might be the smartest financial move you'll ever stupidly make. Here's the definition most people think they know. An asset is something valuable. A liability is something cheap or bad. That definition is wrong, comfortably wrong. The correct definition is far less exciting. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out. That's it. No vibes, no Instagram potential. No emotional attachment, just direction of cash flow. Now here's where things get awkward. Because many things marketed as assets, homes, cars, collectibles, and lifestyle upgrades do not put money in your pocket. They sit there and slowly drink from it. They look impressive on one side of the scale while quietly stacking weight on the other. Mortgage payments, insurance, maintenance, taxes, upgrades, repairs. The scale doesn't care how hard you worked for it. It only cares which way the money moves. And most people never check because the object feels like progress. Let's talk about the purchases people defend the hardest, because the harder something is to criticize, the more damage it usually does. These are the so-called dream purchases: the car you deserve, the house that finally proves you have made it, the boat you will use all the time. And on paper, they look reasonable until ownership starts quietly invoicing you. The price tag lie. Here's the first trick: you're shown the price once, you pay for it forever. A $50,000 car isn't $50,000. It's depreciation, the moment you turn the key. Insurance that never stops. Maintenance that escalates with age. Taxes, registration, and the privilege of storing it. By year 5, that asset has lost half its value, absorbed tens of thousands in upkeep, and locked you into higher monthly burn. So yes, technically you own it just owns you more. The second one is opportunity cost, the invisible drain. Here's the cost nobody feels immediately. Every dollar tied up in a depreciating object is a dollar that can't compound, reduce risk, and buy flexibility. You didn't just buy a car, you bought fewer choices. That's the real expense. And it shows up later when you can't take a pay cut, can't move cities, and can't take a risk. Because your lifestyle now needs feeding. Last but not least, the dream that turns into a job. Here's the plot twist no one advertises. Dream purchases create unpaid labor. The bigger the house, the more the cleaning, repairs, and mental tracking. The luxury item doesn't simplify your life. It gives you another system to manage. And systems demand attention, which is ironic because most people bought these things to feel free. Now let's talk about the real villain. Not bad math, not ignorance. Comparison. Yes, comparison. Because most people don't upgrade out of need. They upgrade to stay in place, socially. Second, the silent inflation of normal. What felt luxurious 5 years ago now feels basic. And that's not because your needs changed, it's because your reference point did. Social media doesn't show you utility, it shows you norms. And once something looks normal, not having it feels like falling behind. So people don't ask, do I want this? They ask, what will it say if I don't? Third, subscription death by 1,000 cuts. Then there's the quiet bleed. Subscriptions you signed up for once and now just coexist with streaming, software, delivery services, and upgrades you barely notice. Each one feels harmless. Together, they form a permanent tax on your income. And the worst part? They don't improve your life proportionally. They just prevent discomfort, which is not the same as progress. Fourth, status is a moving target. Here's the trap. You don't arrive at lifestyle success. The moment you upgrade, the finish line moves. There's always a newer version, a bigger upgrade, and a better aesthetic. So the chase never ends, and the cost compounds. Meanwhile, the people actually building wealth often look underwhelming, because wealth doesn't need to signal itself. Last but not least, the escape hatch. Here's the quiet rebellion. Stop optimizing for appearance. Start optimizing for optionality. Optionality is boring to look at and incredible to live with. It's what lets you say no
No.
without panic, yes
Yes.
without stress, later
There.
without fear, and the only way to get it is to stop letting lifestyle inflation set your baseline. Which brings us to the uncomfortable realization. Most people aren't broke because they don't earn enough. They're broke because everything they own expects them to keep earning forever. And once you see that, you're finally ready to talk about ownership on purpose. This is the moment where most people expect a list of smart money tips. So let's disappoint them. Because the problem isn't that people don't know what to do, it's that they keep making decisions in the worst possible mental state. Excited, impatient, socially observed, and financially optimistic, which is a dangerous combination. Most wealth-destroying purchases don't happen logically. They happen emotionally and get justified retroactively with math. So before we talk about what to buy, we need to talk about how decisions are made. 1. The 72-hour rule, or how most bad purchases die quietly. Here's a simple experiment. Any purchase that feels exciting, anything you feel the urge to tell someone about, anything that makes you imagine a new version of yourself, wait 72 hours, no spreadsheets, no pros and cons lists, just time. If after 3 days the desire weakens, congratulations, you just avoided buying a future bill disguised as motivation. If it still feels necessary after 72 hours, now, and only now, you're allowed to think rationally. Which brings us to the part most people skip. 2. The true cost question nobody asks. Instead of asking, can I afford this? Ask, what does this cost me after I've forgotten I bought it? Because the purchase price is the smallest part of the equation. Ownership comes with invisible taxes. Maintenance, insurance, time, mental space, and lost flexibility. A car doesn't just cost money, it decides where you can live, what jobs you can take, how fragile your finances become when income fluctuates. Same with a house, same with subscriptions, same with anything that locks you into a fixed monthly rhythm, which leads to a dangerous misconception. 3. Wants that pretend to be needs. Most liabilities survive because they wear a convincing disguise. They don't say, I'm a luxury, they say, I'm practical. I need the bigger place. I need the newer car. I need this to stay competitive. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If something requires constant justification, it's probably not a need. Needs are boring. They don't demand explanation. Wants, on the other hand, come with stories. Stories about productivity, identity, or future success. And stories are expensive. 4. Ownership versus access, the question that changes everything. Here's a rule that quietly separates wealthy thinkers from everyone else. If you only need something occasionally, ownership is probably stupid. Cars, tools, vacations, even housing size. Ownership makes sense only when usage is frequent, costs are predictable, and the item directly supports income or long-term stability. Otherwise, access beats ownership almost every time. But access doesn't feel impressive. You can post, I wisely didn't buy this on social media, which is why people keep choosing status over strategy. 5. The only question that actually matters. So here's the filter that ends most bad decisions instantly. Does this move me closer to financial independence or lock me further into dependence? Not richer, not happier, not more successful, independent. If the answer is it complicates my life, it increases pressure, or it commits future income, that's not an asset, that's a beautifully designed anchor. And once you start asking this question consistently, something strange happens. You don't feel deprived. You feel lighter. Because every purchase you don't make is one less obligation your future self has to carry. And that's where the final chapter eventually makes sense. Because once ownership stops draining you, money stops reacting and starts working. Here's where the story usually falls apart. People finally accept that some things they own are quietly draining them, and then immediately ask, okay, but what do I do instead? This is where most advice gets vague, inspirational, and useless, so let's be precise. When you stop pouring money into liabilities, the first thing you don't get is wealth. You get margin. And margin doesn't feel exciting at first. It feels like extra money sitting around, fewer monthly commitments, and less pressure to keep earning at the same pace. Which is why most people destroy it immediately. They upgrade again. They justify another purchase. They turn margin back into obligation. Because margin feels empty and obligations feel productive, but margin is where wealth actually begins. Margin is what allows money to wait, and money that can wait can grow. This is the difference most people never experience. When your income is already spoken for, every decision feels urgent. Every job feels necessary. Every bad situation feels permanent. But when you redirect money away from things that consume it, something subtle happens. Your money stops reacting and starts positioning. You can invest without panic. Learn skills without desperation. Take risks without fear of collapse. This is why true wealth rarely looks impressive at first. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up as lower stress, fewer forced decisions, and more leverage over your own time. While everyone else is upgrading lifestyles, you're quietly upgrading options, and options compound faster than income ever will. That's the irony. The people who look the least successful early on are often the ones buying freedom in small, boring increments, no applause, no validation. Just a scale that slowly, almost invisibly, tips in their favor. This is what redirecting money actually means. Not deprivation, not sacrifice, but choosing assets that don't demand your attention, your time, or your future earnings in exchange for feeling accomplished today. Because the real flex isn't what you own, is what you don't have to pay for anymore. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Building wealth isn't about earning more, it's about keeping more and letting it grow. So audit what you own. Not emotionally, not defensively, just honestly. Ask yourself, is this lifting the scale or sitting on it? And remember, the goal isn't to own nothing, it's to avoid owning things that own you. If you want to go deeper, there's a financial course linked in the description that breaks this down step by step. No hype, no shortcuts, just fewer stupid mistakes.